Hello, everybody. It is me, 7th Hanuman. Today, I will show you guys a disturbing video, and the details of this video needs to be explained in a way that's unlike the public are used to hearing. I will break down the details as we watch this video, and like the title of this live stream, negative automatic thoughts, suicidal thoughts are from gang stalkers. For those of you that have been watching my live stream and been following me for a long time, you know I always talk about how the gang stalkers controls this world and how the gang stalkers are in everyone's mind and how the gang stalkers can induce thoughts. And I also may mention that all suicidal thoughts comes from these gang stalkers. Now, it is a theory, just like the medical field, they have their own theories, but they do not know where these ideas and thoughts come from. They believe it comes from the patient, but I disagree. These negative thoughts comes from the gang stalkers. Now, if you're listening to this and you are here for the first time, you might draw a blank in your mind. Gang stalkers? Who are these gang stalkers? And that's fine because I have not shown the world whom these gang stalkers are, but I will this coming April. So I will try to explain this video as we watch it together. But just remember, this video, the detail, the content itself, it's sad, it's disturbing, and it's unfortunate, and it's active evil. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, so just letting you guys know, this is only my theory. If you've been going to your doctor, continue going to your doctor. Do not stop going because of this video. So just keep that in mind. So here we go. Let's start this video. And I will pause along the way. It's a 17-minute video. So let's just watch it together and we'll go from there. Give me 1 second. So here we go.
And Callan were face down on the floor. Cora was on her side with her torso turned towards the floor. He removed the bands and begged them to breathe. He continued to scream uncontrollably and screamed for officers to come to the basement. The dispatchers are hearing this and they send help down to the basement. And when they encounter Patrick, he yells out, "She killed the kids."
We're learning more gruesome details about the murders of 3 young Massachusetts children as their mother, Lindsay Clancy, is charged in their deaths. In Clancy's first court appearance since the murders, she appeared virtually from her hospital bed.
On Friday, January 27, 2023, using an erasable whiteboard because she was still temporarily intubated, one of the first questions that Lindsay Clancy asked was, "Do I need an attorney?" She knew that she had murdered her children, and she had the clarity, focus, and mental acumen to focus on protecting her own rights and interests.
Prosecutors outlined the events that led up to the murders on January 24th, alleging Lindsay Clancy meticulously planned the deaths of 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson and 8-month-old Callan before attempting her own suicide by jumping out of a second-story window.
On the morning of Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, the defendant took her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, to the pediatrician's for an appointment. She interacted with a receptionist, nursing staff, and a doctor. There were apparently no issues with the defendant's demeanor or behavior as she completed the appointment and was allowed to leave with Cora without any issues or concerns. When she returned home, she went outside with Cora and her 3-year-old son, Dawson, to play in the snow. They built a snowman. The defendant sent photos to her mother and to the defendant, to her husband. She texted with them. Nothing in the text was out of the ordinary or any sign of any distress or trouble.
After that, prosecutors say Lindsay Clancy searched for the 3V restaurant in Plymouth, about 25 minutes from her home in Duxbury.
She then searched the Takeout 3V via her cell phone at 4:13 p.m. Immediately after doing that, she used Apple Maps on her phone to determine how long it would take someone to drive from her home in Duxbury to 3V restaurant in Plymouth. So she would know how long someone would be gone if they ran that errand.
It was then that Clancy texted her husband, Patrick Clancy, asking for takeout.
At 4:53 p.m., the defendant texted her husband, who was working in his home office in their basement. She texted, "Any chance you want to do takeout from 3V? I didn't cook anything. It's been a long day." This was an unusual request, as when the family ordered takeout, they'd usually go somewhere closer to home, but it was a place that they had been in the past. Patrick Clancy texted back yes, and then the defendant asked him to check the menu.
Minutes later, Patrick Clancy left the family home.
At 5:15 p.m., Patrick Clancy headed out the door to run these errands at the defendant's request.
Now, I want to stop here. So this person you see right now is the defendant. She's the mother. She's in the hospital. She jumped out of the second story window. So she's in the hospital. So she's actually doing this appearing in front of the judge through video chat.
As he left, she texted him Pedialex liquid stool softener. Surveillance footage shows Mr. Clancy at CVS on Summer Street in Kingston at 5:32 p.m. He goes to the medication aisle, the children's medication aisle. Phone records show that he called the defendant at 5:33 p.m. and she did not answer the phone. He then calls him back at 5:34 p.m. and the call lasted 14 seconds. He's there at the store unsure of which medication to get, and she tells him exactly what she wants. He had no issues communicating with her. It was a completely normal call, although he did mention that she seemed like she was in the middle of something.
When Patrick Clancy returned home, he found a tragic scene.
When he arrived home, the first thing he noticed was the silence. He did not see or hear the defendant or the children. He actually called her cell phone at 6:09 p.m. looking for them, and she did not answer. He went to their bedroom on the second floor and the door was locked. He was able to open it, and when he looked inside, he saw blood on the floor in front of a full-length mirror and the window open. He immediately runs downstairs and into the backyard, where he finds the defendant laying on the ground. She appeared to have cuts on her wrists and neck, but he stated to 911 that those wounds were no longer bleeding. She was conscious. He called 911. During this time, he asked the defendant, "What did you do?" She responded to him, "I tried to kill myself and jumped out the window." During the 911 call, Patrick can be heard asking the defendant, "Where are the kids?" He later told police that she replied, "In the basement." So immediately after this happened, she knew what she had done and she knew where the kids were. When EMS arrived, he asked them to stay with her so he could go find his kids. The 911 call kept going. Patrick can be heard on the 911 call entering the home and heading to the basement. At one point, he calls out, "Guys." He can then be heard screaming in agony and shock as he found his children. His screams seem to get louder and more agonized as the time passes.
Prosecutors say the 3 Clancy children were found with exercise bands around their necks.
Cora and Callan were on the floor in the den area of the finished basement, which is to the left when you walk down the stairs. while Dawson was alone on the floor in his father's home office, which is to the right when you go down the stairs. Each child still had the exercise band that was used to strangle them tied around their necks when their father found them. Dawson and Callan were face down on the floor. Cora was on her side with her torso turned towards the floor. He removed the bands and begged them to breathe. He continued to scream uncontrollably and screamed for officers to come to the basement. The dispatchers are hearing this and they send help down to the basement. And when they encounter Patrick, he yells out, "She killed the kids."
Cora and Dawson were pronounced dead at the hospital the same day. Baby Callan was rushed to Boston Children's Hospital but died 3 days later. Ahead of their deaths, prosecutors say Clancy spent time in the hospital for mental health issues, but was being treated for her symptoms. She even told her husband she was improving.
According to her husband, she was never on more than 4 to 5 medications at one time. And at the time of the murder, she was taking only 3 medications. And he said to the police that she always took the medications as prescribed. After her stay at McLean, the defendant appeared to be getting better, according to her husband. She slept well, interacted with friends and family. She went out with her kids and husband to places like the Kingsbury Club in Duxbury, the Charlie Horse Restaurant, the Museum of Science in Boston, the Cape Codder down the Cape, interacting with her family and the public without any apparent difficulties. She even stayed alone with the children on several occasions without any issues in January of 2023. Her husband asked her in mid-January, "Are you still having suicidal thoughts?" And she said no.
Prosecutors argue Clancy never had hallucinations or delusions before the murders.
On the night of the killings, Patrick Clancy was interviewed by the police at Beth Israel Deaconess Plymouth Hospital. He told the police that the defendant was having one of her best days. She was smiling and happy, and there was no indication that she was going to harm the kids. No one at all described her as acting like a zombie in the days leading up to the murder or on the day of the murders themselves.
All right, I'm going to stop here. Notice how it mentioned that she didn't act like a zombie leading up to the murder. Well, that zombie feeling, okay, I went through it as a TI, okay, in the beginning stages, and I know a lot of TIs understand what I'm saying. There are moments for me when I'm a zombie, I just end up sitting there daydreaming or standing there dozing off and not being productive. And I made a mention that one time I realized that I was taking too long daydreaming or thinking about stuff, and it took me over 20 minutes to put on a pair of socks. And that's when I realized I need to stop thinking so much into these nonsense, because what the gang stalkers can do is induce thoughts into our mind and also create topics that we can think into, like scenarios in our head, and we can just forget about time and start thinking and imagining into them. And next thing you know, 30 minutes are gone thinking about nonsense, thinking about things that are irrelevant in our lives. And that happened to me so many times. And even till this day, it's still a battle for me to try to maintain focus, because one thing these gang stalkers do is they always takes focus away. And it mentioned that on the day of the murder, she seemed like a normal, fine, she was happy person. And that's a TI, okay? She's not a TI, well, at least she doesn't realize it. But as a TI, all it takes, okay, everything could be happy, everything could be great. All it takes is one little incident, and it just makes us irritated and makes us upset. At least for me, based on my experience, it makes me completely act different. Maybe be more aggressive in the way I talk, not very friendly in my the way I talk to people, in my behavior, the way I move things around the house. I might kind of put stuff down the table with more force than I should. Just not very pleasant. And that can happen just from one little small incident. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened in her case, but I'm just throwing that out there because she seems like a happy person. So what else could happen? Why did all this happen all of a sudden within 30 minutes. So it's important to know that these gang stalkers can mess with our thoughts. And she's have suicidal thoughts. Like I always been saying, suicidal thoughts come from these gang stalkers. Because I don't believe a human would just sit there and start thinking about ways to kill him or herself. The idea itself have to be induced into our mind. It's very fast. It's very quick. It's like a flash, like a quick thought coming through the lower voice to skull. So it's not like the person would hear a voice, another voice. Okay. It's more like all of a sudden the idea just pops in. But in this case, later on, you will hear that she have mentioned that she hear voice telling her to kill herself. Watch, let's listen.
On February 5th, 2023, this past Sunday at 1:35 p.m., while sitting with Dr. Paul Zeisel, the psychologist hired by defense counsel to evaluate her mental state, the defendant used Dr. Zeisel's cell phone to call her husband. She left a voicemail stating that she loved him. Yesterday, on February 6, 2023, at 10:09 a.m., she again used Dr. Zeisel's cell phone to call her husband. This time he answered, and during this call, the defendant stated that after he left the house that night, she killed the kids because she heard a voice and had, quote, a moment of psychosis, end quote.
Wow. You hear that? That night when she killed the kid, when the husband went out to pick up the dinner, she heard a voice that told her to kill the kids and had a moment of psychosis. That's something that I always talk about, state of trance. And for us TIs, we're familiar with that type of feeling, that sensation, like something heavy's on our head, something's going on, like headaches, during strange time, some type of being zapped by like a directed energy weapon, and many other examples. But state of trance is almost like, based on my experience, whenever I get state of trance, it's like a heaviness on my forehead, and it's not like high, but it's like a trance, kind of like a drowsiness in a way, a little bit drowsy. The feeling is not euphoric. It doesn't feel good, and it feels like my energy is being drained. And for someone that's not familiar with situations like that, it could be scary, especially when she heard a voice that told her to kill the kid. And I got a feeling she's been hearing this voice for a long time. This voice been talking to her for a long time. This voice didn't just all of a sudden come out of nowhere and told her to kill the kid and she went and did it. No. For a person that's receiving these voices, okay, from the gang stalkers, if the person gets scared of the voice to skull, okay, the voice to skull, if the person gets scared, having fear, then the gang stalkers can easily manipulate the person and scare the person into doing things because the person believed in the words that of these voices. For instance, the voice might tell the person, "Oh, if you don't do this, we're going to kill you tonight," which is based on my experience. This is something my gang stalkers have told me many times. They have told me this many times through voice to skull. And every time I understand the no fear mentality, I call it bluffs. I talk trash right back to them. And this is my story, and this is how I found out about this experience. Of that they're bluffing me, that they're just bluffing me. And for a person that don't have or understand the no fear mentality, and hearing these very verbal, abusive voices, it's scary. And I would imagine a lot of people out there getting these voices through voice to skull, they would actually believe in the words that whatever they're saying to the person. So I believe that she's been hearing these voices for a long time, and they've always been negative. And they most likely always talk about if she doesn't do it, they're gonna kill her, probably kill her husband, kill everyone. It's a bunch of threats. And when a person's in fear, receiving these voices, the possibility are huge. I mean, if someone is afraid of you and all you're doing is it's using voice to skull or talking to someone on the phone and they're really scared of you and you tell them to go do this, do that, or you're gonna do something terrible to that person, and that person's so scared, yeah, can you imagine? It's quite easy to make that person do things for you. As an example. So, and this voice told her to murder the kids. And I'm sure this voice also told her to kill herself. That's why I always tell the people in the TI community, all suicidal thoughts comes from the gang stalkers.
He asked her what voices she heard, and she said she heard a man's voice telling her to kill the kids and kill herself because it was her last chance. Patrick Clancy told the police the defendant had never heard voices before. He also told the police the defendant had never used the word psychosis to him before. The first time she used that word psychosis was when she was with a doctor hired by defense counsel and using his cell phone.
Prosecutors also say Clancy had every opportunity to change her mind about going through with the murders, as they say it took time to strangle each child. Instead, they say she acted deliberately.
The children were killed by ligature strangulation. Ligature strangulation causes the victim to become unconscious anywhere from 10 seconds up to a minute. The more the victim struggles, the longer it takes. After the victim is unconscious, the ligature must be held in place with force, squeezing the neck for up to an additional 4 to 5 minutes to cause death. Therefore, she had to strangle each of them to unconsciousness and then make sure the bands were squeezing their little necks for several minutes. She could have changed her mind at any point during that time and removed those bands from their necks, and she did not. The defendant did not take advantage of the situation when her husband left the home that night. She created the situation, and she used Apple Maps to make sure she would have enough time to strangle each child before her husband returned from where she had sent him. The defendant is a danger to herself and others. She planned these murders, gave herself the time and privacy needed to commit the murders, and then she strangled each child in the place where they should have felt the safest, at home with their mom. She did so with deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity and cruelty.
Clancy's defense argued she is a woman with mental health struggles on top of newly sustained physical trauma.
So you have a paraplegic who can't walk, who is definitely a danger to herself, and the government wants to put her in where? Framingham State Prison? Plymouth House of Correction? There's no way that any humane person would do that, especially within the structure of our criminal justice system, where a person is presumed innocent. And I'm not suggesting with the facts that the government has read, but she has a good defense. She's got a darn good defense for this case, because that's what happened.
Clancy's team said her suicide attempt caused major injuries, rendering her a paraplegic.
To have this woman not held on bail, perhaps put a GPS on her, I guess, if someone's concerned that she's going to miraculously recover, which isn't going to happen. As your Honor knows, being a paraplegic, paralyzed, she can't move. Can't get off the bed. She can't walk. She can't even go to the bathroom. She has to have 24/7 medical care.
The defense also noted that Clancy is suicidal, saying her cries for mental health help were ignored.
We all know that this woman is, as counsel concedes apparently, a danger to herself. I question whether she would ever make it to a trial. She's suicidal. She's extremely emotional. However, she's unable and has been unable to express any happiness or sadness or cry. And in fact, sometime about a month or two ago, she made the comment, "I just wish that I could feel something."
Does that sound somewhat familiar for some of you TIs out there? The feeling numb, like no more feelings. And my gang stalkers always tells me they've been killing me and they want to kill my soul. And the way they do it, okay, there's two ways for them to do it. One is to put fear into your mind. So if you have fear, that is their number one way of killing your own spirit. Makes you lose hope. Makes you not look forward to doing anything in the future. Makes you not have a plan to retire or a future plan for anything that's any goal, okay, achieving any goals. So that's the first tactic. The second way they do it is in your dreams. They can induce different ideas into our dreams when we're sleeping. Like I mentioned before, when we're sleeping, we're the most vulnerable because we're not moving. We're just chilling on our bed. So we're perfect. We're just there for them to do whatever they like. So when we're sleeping, they kill us in their dreams. I know a lot of TIs can't remember their dreams. And I know for me, that's what they do to me when I go to sleep. But here's what puts everything over the top. If you have fear when you're awake, okay, like now when we're awake, you have fear of these gang stalkers. When you go to sleep, you're just vulnerable. You're really vulnerable, defenseless. And if you understand the no fear mentality when we're awake, like now, when you go to sleep, you at least have some defense because that's who you are when you awake. And you actually bring that person, that spirit, that character with you into your dreams. Now, is that 100% protection? No, it's not. But at least you understand no fear mentality, and that is the most important thing, and that's the core of your defense against these gang stalkers. And when I say no fear mentality, I'm not talking about, you're not scared of confronting people or getting into fights or calling people out in public and going into a bunch of gangsters and start talking trash. I'm not talking about that type of fear. No fear. No fear as in mentally. You don't let these gang stalkers put the negative thoughts into your mind and try to scare you when there's nothing else going on. It's like you don't let them put the paranoia into your mind when there's nothing going on and the paranoia is already doing enough damage to you because you believe into the paranoia that, something bad's going to happen, because that's the negative thought that comes into your mind, some type of paranoia thought, when it's not even happening, but yet he or she completely think into it and believe that's going to happen when it's not happening. So that is a form of fear inside the mind. And a lot of people are victim to that. So you have to understand the no fear mentality to have defense, some type of protection when you go to sleep and you go into your dreams.
Now, our society fails miserably in treating women with postpartum depression or even postpartum psychosis. It's medicate, medicate, medicate. Throw the pills at you and then see how it works. If it doesn't work, increase the dose or decrease the dose. Then end up trying another combination of medications.
In the end, presiding judge John Canavan ruled no monetary bail would be set just yet.
The factual.
Well, I have to stop here. Okay, my gang stalker have made a mention before. My gang stalker have told me that they control all the females on this planet. Now, when they told me this, I don't, of course, not 100% all females, but what they're saying is, the over majority, maybe 99 something, 95, 98% of the females. And that's not because I'm not saying the females have a weak mind. It's just females are more they're like mothers, they're caring. So their mentality is different than men. Men is more hunters, and like warriors like mentality, or what I'm saying. So guys are different compared to women. Women's their mentality is just easier to manipulate for these gang stalkers, just because they're so loving and caring, and makes them more vulnerable to these thoughts. I'm not saying all, but majority.
Allegations in this case are both horrific and tragic. The potential penalty faced by the defendant, if convicted, is severe. The defendant has no criminal history. She does not even have a driving record. There is no evidence of any history of any abusive behavior by the defendant. The defendant was raised in New England and has extensive ties to the local area. She has an extremely supportive family. She had worked for several years in a local hospital, and a number of coworkers have written letters in support of the defendant and her character. She's described in these letters as an exemplary worker, colleague, and friend. In the letter submitted by her attending trauma surgeon, she has extensive injuries that will require long-term inpatient rehabilitation. Weighing what the doctor has written and the facts in the defendant's current condition, the court finds that there is minimal risk of flight given the defendant's circumstances. The court is going to make the following order on bail. The defendant shall remain in her current hospital until medically cleared to be moved to a new facility. As a condition of bail, the defendant is ordered not to leave the hospital until discharged to a new facility. The defendant shall provide notice to probation 48 hours in advance of any transfer to a different facility. Based on the letter of the doctor, it would appear likely that she would be sent from the hospital setting to a 24/7 rehabilitation facility.
The judge ruled Clancy could be transferred to a different facility or potentially even home confinement as she recovers. Right now, she's due back in court on May 2nd for a probable cause hearing. Reporting for Law and Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.
Okay, so probable cause. There's really nothing she could gain from that. She murdered her kids. She tried to commit suicide. She destroyed her own life. No longer lives at home. Now it's got to be in a hospital or go to prison or be in some 24/7 mental place that takes care of her. So what could she possibly gain from that? I mean, there's no life insurance or nothing like that. So what can she gain? I can't think of one, other than the fact that she self-sabotage. Self-sabotage was exactly what she did. But it was the dumpster-stained gang stalkers that scared her into doing it. All it took was a voice telling her, kill your kids, kill yourself, this is your last chance. That's all it took. Based on what she said, what she told her husband over the phone. The voice told her, this is your last chance. And she bought into it. These dumpster-stained gang stalkers, they can mess with people's mind. And they don't care about people. We're just like a game to them. And that makes them, well, I don't like using the word, but it's like a good word that I think is a good word. I call them demons. That's like a personality of a demon. Comes from these dumpster-stained gang stalkers. And few words in a sentence, in 2 sentences, was enough to make her so afraid that she killed her kids. Now, the skeptic will say something like, no, she planned all of this. There's no such thing as voices. There's no demons, all this stuff. Okay, but then, like, towards the end of that video, what's the probable cause? Why is she doing this? What's she gaining out of this? If you just want to call her crazy, then that's too simple, because the way I explain it is a lot more detailed than just calling her crazy or mentally insane or have mental disorder. So why is she doing this? Well, she said it, and I believe her. The voice told her to do it, and it's her last chance. So she's a victim. Her whole families are victims. I feel bad for the husband. I mean, can you imagine what he's going through? I can't imagine that. It's just, I can't. Situations like that shouldn't happen to anyone. But do I know about their private lifestyle? I don't. But the kids, do they deserve to die? No, they don't. So the mom was the vulnerable one, heard the voice, from a man telling her to kill the kids and kill herself, and it's the last chance. But what doesn't make sense is, why would she even kill herself? A last chance for what? So I know there's some details in there that she's not. Well, she did mention that she's in a psychosis. It's almost like mind control. And for people that don't understand or have not experienced anything like this, or feel the sensation of headaches and heaviness, yeah, it's scary. But the TIs out there that actually receive voice to skull, they are familiar with that feeling of psychosis, that feeling of like drowsiness, and kind of doing things, but not thinking about doing it, but just kind of doing it. It's almost like the brain kind of was being prevented from actually thinking, or using critical thinking skills, or analyzing the situation. But we can actually practice on recovering from that. It takes some practice. But in that moment, it wasn't the first time that she heard that voice. I don't believe it. That voice been communicating with her for a while. And the fact that it told her last chance. So I don't know what other details were there leading up to it. How many years she's been hearing that voice, how many months she's been hearing that voice. But the fact that the voice told her last chance, that just means it wasn't the first time that she heard the voice talk to her. So she was in fear the entire time. And that's why the no fear mentality is very important. Thank you guys for joining me. This is a short live stream. I just want to show you guys that video. I will upload another video later on today. So, it's Super Bowl Sunday. So if you're watching Super Bowl, enjoy yourself. All right. Take care, everybody. Shimo signing out.